Okay, well, thanks for everyone. This is a overview of a Git book that I've been producing for the Auditability Challenge Team. I've been trying to produce it in such a way to make it as generic as possible. So maybe it could be useful for other challenge teams to use. And I'm trying to find the share screen button. There it is, the share screen button. Okay, so let's see. Sometimes this takes a while to come up. Can people see that? Yeah. Okay, this is
yes, we can see Stephen.
Sorry? You can see it, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is the Improve and Grow Auditability Git book. So this is the landing page. You know, as I say, it's just an idea to keep this generic. So originally it was going to be a Git book dedicated to the F8 Improve and Grow Auditability. But I realized it could apply to multiple challenges. So here you could have the detail of a specific challenge, and this is copied from the campaign brief. But then you could have multiple challenge here. So as Patrick was saying, you could have a Fun7 detail here as well. Then I have a section for the challenge team. Okay, and it starts with the challenge team process. The challenge team's process, as we're all aware, was presented by Chris Bard in the slide presentation. And this is important to pay attention to because it's really the minimum that challenge teams have to deliver. So it's documented in this Git book just to remind ourselves. It's got the supporting details of where that was all discussed. So, you know, this is where it was all discussed and agreed. And there's a round table as well. There's another round table, I think, coming up next week. Then there's a section to record challenge team meetings. So usually the first meeting is where you get together to decide, you know, who should be in, you have a first meeting, and this is the record of the first meeting. We have meetings about Challenge Fest there and challenge ranking as well. So these are just recording things that come along and the challenge team does that is useful to keep a record of. Then we have challenge team members, and I've kept out any, obviously you keep out any confidential data here, so there's no contact details, but this is about the applicants to the challenge team. So, you know, you remember for challenge team for Fund 8, we had a weekend basically to get together our challenge team, and then we had to confirm who was the member who could be a member of the challenge and who couldn't. Like Sebastian had other commitments, and then a record of the confirmation email. So we all got it here. We all know who's the member of the team. We know when that was confirmed. Then the challenge team timetable. Okay, so when did we start? This is also useful to keep track of, but you don't have to keep track of too much. You just have to say, okay, that's when the challenge team was recruited. That's when, if you're going to renew the challenge, and this is very important because a lot of people forget this, is that as soon as you're just after you set up a challenge team, you often have to renew the challenge. So keep a record of doing that as well. Then this is forward looking. So it's looking to see what's the challenge team going to do. So the first task is to consider, okay, what we're going to do about the proposals that are submitted in our challenge. So this might have any details of any decisions there, like does the challenge team want to leave a standard message? There's different discussions, and different challenge teams have different approaches to this. When we get into April, then we're looking into promoting challenges. Like if you have a challenge, so say you've drafted your Fund 9 setting, and you want that to succeed your existing challenge, you want to think about promoting that and getting the word out there. Otherwise, it may not get revoted for. Then later on in May, May will be the voting results. So that in May, you'll be onboarding your challenge. You know, so the people onboarding the proposers who successfully got voted for in your challenge. So that's a kind of a useful section there for the timetable. You can put details in there. And then finally in September, that's going to be the end for the fund date of the retrospective. That's when you're going to do your final reports. There's also a reference here to Felix's Challenge Fest here, so I've documented that as well. And that has a rather interesting section on challenge ranking as well, which asks people to rank different challenges, but also it's it's interesting to keep a record of that. So what else does a challenge team do? There's also insight sharing. Okay, so there's actually keeping record. If you run a challenge and you'll want to sustain that challenge going forward, then it's a good idea to try not just to involve yourself in the proposal process, but to submit insights, because it shows you're engaging with the community and you have something to say about your challenge as well. So this is where that, and there's actually, so that's a record of, there's actually an opportunity by Catalyst School. I think Victor got funding for this for a Catalyst School, for challenge teams to set up insight sharing workshops for their challenges. And we saw this for different challenges, that they were all recorded, and I've recorded the slides here as well. So in the GitBook, you can record each slide, and the script of the slide you can document underneath. So this provides a nice reference overview of your challenge. It gives you preparation. It means you don't have to reinvent the wheel, because you can go back to these slides, and any slides that you need to do later, you can base it off this and learn from it. Now, if you submitted some insight sharing in Fund 8 that's related to your challenge, this is where you can record that. So as you see, this is sequential. It's related to the process, reminding the process here. All this is related to the process. What happens, what's the first thing in the process is the town hall presentation. So that's what you've put together a challenge team, and then the challenge team does a presentation of the town hall about the brief. This for Fund 8, it was quite preset and prescribed. So there was a certain pattern to follow, where Chris and his team advised us on how we should present that challenge, like why is it important, the challenge brief, and further information. But that's all documented there as well. There's the Telegram group link as well. Then keeping a record of submitted proposals. I've kept this blank for the moment because what we find, and what we're finding this Fund 8, is a lot of proposals are submitted, but they're placeholder proposals. But what could be useful here is proposals that look like they're going to stay submitted, and then you can keep a record of them here, or keep a record of whether you've contacted them. Obviously, it wouldn't be worthwhile keeping a record of proposals that you don't think will go forward or be withdrawn, or which are placeholders, but this will be filled out. And then you would do the same thing much later, once in May, once the Fund 8 is voted for. Daniel sent around this email, which I put in here as the basis for guidelines for how the challenge team approaches funded proposals. Now, this section will turn into so the thing is to take Daniel's guidelines here. How can the challenge teams coordinate with each funded group? And then to turn this into sections here on the side. So you're keeping a record of how you are approaching your funded proposals. And again, different challenge teams are doing this in their own way, in their different way. Some challenge teams are being quite official. If it's a development, just saying, give me this data on a regular basis, where some are take a more qualitative approach. Then there's this is a kind of, I think here it's a regular contact that you have. I think it's at least bi-weekly with the funded proposers. So you're supposed to be in contact with them over a period until that period ends, and then you do a final retrospective. And this is where you would put details. I haven't put anything here at the moment, but here you would put details about your final perspective. And then finally, you just have useful links. And useful links here are the reporting data that the IOG team keep, particularly the funded projects reporting data, which is obviously very relevant to a challenge team, so you can check what's been reported in different challenges. The publicly available data about challenge teams that Daniel maintains as well. And then the link, there's also a link here I put to an auditing GitBook, which George maintains about auditing standards, because this is relevant to the Improve and Grow Auditability Challenge. But if you have materials that are relevant to your own challenges, like Patrick, if it was open source materials or something like that, this is where you would put useful links. And then you would have obviously really important links like the Community Advisor Assessment Guide, because here you've got a kind of authoritative guide to how proposals are assessed, and also that could help you assess potentially how the funded proposals are meeting their obligations. So that is really it. That's just a basic framework. So if there's any, it wasn't a presentation, it's nice and short and sweet, but I just thought that might be useful for people to look at. I know people got different approaches. So if there's any questions, Patrick.
Okay, beautiful. I love it. It's really making light on a path that it feels a little bit dark for me. I want to reuse it. I did check Git Book is like $6 a month per team member. Is there a way to get, I don't know, I mean, if it's only for me and my team cannot collaborate, it's a one-way thingy.
Yeah, we have some thought about that, because in the earlier projects, I've got an open source concession, which made it free. But the problem with an open source concession for GitBook, it doesn't allow you team collaboration. So it only allows, which obviously renders it a bit useless, because if you have a challenge team, it's ideally you want more than people to get involved. One possible solution, and Cowie might be able to chip in here, is that there's now various community organizations that have GitBook accounts that we pay through funding. One of them is Catalyst School, another one is Catalyst Swarm, and another one is QADAO. And Catalyst School potentially could be a place, we'd have to talk to Catalyst School about this. All the challenge teams, Patrick, could set up a GitHub account, sorry, a GitBook account, you know, that's another option. So in the first instance, I would suggest maybe Catalyst School. The reason why I say that is because I'm also putting in proposals with the school. Hopefully Cowie will be involved in this a little bit as well, to train people in these things. Like, so, I mean, the reason why I did this presentation was so I could record that as well, and then I can use this as training material, you know. So I'm also preparing more how to set up a GitBook, like very basic training. So like how to set up the account, how to edit a GitBook, you know, so people can access that as well. But to answer your question about that, it's more useful to have the paid account access, but that's $8 per person per month with a minimum of 5 users. So it can be quite expensive unless you have a group.
Let me ask again, because I'm now watching the pricing, and you mentioned that open source has some limitations. So I see community, free for open source projects. Seems it might work.
It could work if it's just 1 or 2 people who's going to update the GitBook, that could work. Yeah. And also, obviously, with what you're doing, because you're doing your open source challenge.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't get your last sentence.
Sorry. It's for what you're doing, I think you could get an open source concession, because obviously what you're using it for is the open source challenge. Also, if you just have 1 or 2 people updating the GitBook, then that can work. But if you have more people, if you're expecting more people, like 4 or 5 people, then it's best to go for a paid account. That's all I would say.
Now, let me ask you one follow-up question.
Sure.
So you mentioned Catalyst Worm, Catalyst School, QADAO. Each of these DAOs, let's call things with that name, have an account, and my understanding is I already saw several Git books under QADAO. That means that you can create as many as you want.
Yes, you can. And if you have an account, that creates what's called a Git book organization, I think. And then the individual books are called spaces. And you can create, I think, there might be up to 200 or something like that. But you can create a lot of them. Also, if you create your own organization, then it can be your own slug, your own URL root. So you could have like open source challenge or something at the root. And if you notice, a lot of Git books, they either have, the ones that I maintain are Swarm GitBook or QADAO GitBook. There's also, actually there is another one. There's Catalyst Circle now have their own one as well. Yeah.
I am a big fan of consistency, but also centralization. Don't look me bad, in the sense that, if I'm searching for something, and there is a single access point.
Yeah, I know.
And then I was thinking, what if we take this and we basically, there is a domain. What if I can divide the space something like, I don't know, QADAO, F8 or F7, and then / name of the challenge. And then basically we would have a taxonomy under F7, or I don't know, F7 challenges, and then a list of challenges for Fun7, F8 challenges, and then a list of challenges of Fun8. With this way, if we can have this system, I think it will be pretty simple for everybody to try to stay at the same level. If it is for me, if I could, I don't know, push a button and have something tomorrow, I would have basically at least F8, and then your challenge and all the other challenges, which are just a copy of yours, and then tell everybody, okay, now insert your data.
It's funny you mention that, because for Fun7, I've just posted that in chat. I did put in a funding application for a Git book to cover all the challenges, and I even started work on it. So that Git book there lists all the challenge, the Fun7 challenges, so it could have, but I didn't get funded for it, so and it's a lot of work. So I did consider, I also set up a GitHub organization with a repository for each challenge.
Oh, nice.
Do you remember this? I'm not sure if you remember I did this. This is in Fun7. But that I've discovered it's an awful lot of work, so, and a lot of coordination, because you're not only coordinating a challenge team, you're trying to coordinate all the challenge teams, and that changes per fund. So I kind of gave up on that, because first of all, I didn't get funded, and also it didn't seem to be very sustainable, because it would take a team of people to maintain that, and also the challenge teams are quite independent. A lot of different challenge teams do things their own way. So I thought what I'll do is just focus on one challenge, like Auditability Challenge, do a kind of as generic approach as possible, and then just offer that as a template for other challenge teams.
I think you had a very good idea, and you should keep pursuing it. And if you want help, I don't know how long it will take, but I've already opened the open source developer ecosystem. I can feel it. And after all, the challenge teams are, a group of people that they care about the challenge, and they would like to spend some time. I know that nobody of you has time, but you have passion.
The thing is, I'm just aware.
Sleeping is overrated.
Yeah, I'm just aware of that tension between, what you mentioned before is interesting, like that tension. We're now having a lot of information sources in the ecosystem. And actually, I went to an IOG technical talk today about, I don't know if you've heard of Built on QADAO. They are a group that I just posted their URL actually. They maintain a directory of developments that are literally built on QADAO. And they've got very interesting, but they curate, you know, they aggregate everything that's been listed on QADAO, but they look out for things on Twitter, and then they curate it. They check to see if it's really a real project or if it's just like a scam or something like that. And then they do a standard record for each project. Now, something like that would be very useful for Project Catalyst because we have multiple information sources, okay? But then the same issue comes to mind is who's going to curate those sources, okay, in an authoritative way that can be trusted, okay? And then there's
challenge team members.
Yeah, they could. Yeah, they could. They could. Yeah, so I just put that as a one way forward, the kind of built on QADAO, which actually just lists mostly things that have been built from a development perspective. What we do is a lot of community projects as well in Catalyst. But it's just a way forward, potentially, where we can go. And obviously, I think with each fund, we are hopefully improving in the challenge teams. You know, I think Fund 8 is slightly better than Fund 7. But if you're interested, Patrick, I mean, the Git book has a GitHub backend, which is a repository that potentially could just be forked or copied, and you could base your own Git book, Patrick, on that if you want, and you can change it to your own needs. You know, so what I may try and do is set up a template, a GitHub template, okay, and then based on that, which then people can then just click use this template, and then once they set up the Git book, they can then feed it back into the template. But obviously that requires some thought about how that would work, you know.
This is okay. First of all, I have a question, but I'll ask for a second. But the point is, this is about saving time and improving accuracy. So I basically, now that I saw this, I know that I can have a place where all the documentation is there, all the team members can refer there, all the projects, the proposing can go there. And that is going to cost me only the time divided by the 3 challenge members that we have are per team to set this up. And then everything is there. If I have any doubt, I go back to your Git book and I check if there is any update. I mean, I always lose myself in emails and, you know, I basically...
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you don't think it's important until you realize what you've lost track of, you know, so... And that's what I thought about. And also there's other things you can do, which I haven't demonstrated. You can embed a Google form into a Git book, for example. So let's say you'll want feedback on something. You can embed that form in a page on your Git book. Okay. You can also do spreadsheet type formats. So in some of my other Git books, I have Git books that are for proposals. Okay. And what they do, when I want to submit a monthly report, I do my monthly report in the Git book. And if I have charges against the funding, I show what's been charged there. So I have a kind of constant record. I have complete documentation of the whole proposal, you know, as well as, and not just documentation of the proposal, but documentation of how the proposal is being executed and charged to the fund as well. So, I mean, this is, I am a bit cautious because not everyone can use Git books. At Catalyst School, we're kind of realizing this a little bit, but there are other possibilities like Catalyst School, and this is off topic a little bit, but Lucio has now launched the beta of the Catalyst School website, and that automatically takes content from a Git book. So you update a Git book and it updates the website. You know, so there's various things that can be done and we're working on that could enhance this mechanism, you know. But where we are at the moment, Patrick, is, and that's why I present it as it is is in terms of how should it look as a layout. You know, so that's why I did this screen share today, was to get, you know, and you think that's quite a useful layout. I mean, I was just trying to think of it logically.
Some things can be like in software when you refactor. Some things are common for multiple challenges, like the events, the Cardano events, idea first, some are specific. Challenge first, sorry.
And I suppose what differs is when a challenge is the stage we're in now for Fun7, which is how does a challenge team communicate with the funded proposals? Okay, and I think that's going to differ quite a lot between challenges, potentially, or that there's basic guidelines that Daniel has emailed out. But that, you know, but that's also something that you could record in a Git book. But then you've got the problem of the scale, I suppose, because some challenges are going to have a lot of funded proposals and some are going to have less. So that may not be practical in terms of how you manage that. You know, if you have a lot of funded proposals, you might want to link to an external source that you're maintaining as a spreadsheet or something. But if you only have like below 10, then maybe you can actually list them in the Git book itself. You know, that's another approach potentially. You know, so
if it's for me, I would the simple way, scalable way, is you have a list, and in each list there is name and then a link provided by the team, by proposing team.
Yeah. I mean, you already have Daniel's, which they referred to at the town hall today, which is the reporting dashboard kind of thing. You know, so well, what they call it, the spreadsheet. You know, that I'm referring to, where you have the funded proposals and they have their reports linked from there. But you know, so it's not perfect, but it's. But I suppose what you could do is actually, because it's just spreadsheet data, you could just take that data and import it directly into the Git book through some action as well. That's something that could be done in the future.
What I want is provide possibly the best service to everybody and not miss deadline, which is kind of implicit in me as human being.
Yeah, no.
And definitely 90% likely, since I'm also Italian. Sorry for, you know, I'm just joking, like everybody's doing on his country, but the nature of the human beings is tends to chaos.
Yeah.
And I really try to keep up, and many of us are full of things to do. And if we base our workflow on mails, well, that's not working for me. But it works for me if I have, you know, a checklist, and at each moment I can go to this checklist. If I did something, oh, I remember. If I didn't, probably I need to fix something.
Yeah, I think what I found it's made more difficult sometimes in Catalyst because we decentralize. There's a lot of people come together and then go away, and you have to. I mean, I've discovered this over the last year, is that you can't standardize too much. You know, you have to have a light touch. You know, because if you standardize too much, people will just not do it. You know, so what I was trying to do with this Git book, Patrick, was just take the minimum, and to say, if you can just record, for example, okay, we've recruited our challenge team members, that should be recorded somewhere, obviously, you know. yeah. The challenge teams have had their meetings. That would be nice to have somewhere so you can see that you've met what you've decided very basically. Yeah. And then, you know, so you're following the process, but nothing more than that, because unless you want to. I mean, some challenge teams do a lot more than that. You know, they have ideas about how to analyze what sorts of proposals are in the challenge and all that kind of thing. But that is optional and additional to a minimum. I think that helps with getting things done, Patrick, because people, as you say, the default thing is this kind of chaos, but people will only do something like this if it can help them, if they feel that it can help them in some minimal way, and it's going to, where the pain of doing it it's not as bad as the benefits of what you get back. You know, I think I think I should start to wrap up now, because that was just meant to be a brief screen share. But I would refer to a couple of proposals. I think one of them actually is in the open source challenge. Is a proposal called, again, by Catholic School, called Automate, Educate, Communicate, I think. And it's to incentivize the development of GitHub Actions. And it's not only to do that, it's to incentivize the development of GitHub Actions, but then to turn those into training materials. So you ask people to develop a GitHub Action for you, you then document it, and they hand over that knowledge, and it becomes a training material. So then you build up a library of GitHub Actions for the community, but you also provide training for the community in GitHub Actions. And then that is all documented in a Git book. And that kind of thing could help with automation, Patrick, where you mentioned it's nice to be remembered of regular things and not have to remember the regular things. Like, for example, we have a GitHub action in Circle Admin, which reminds us to do the town hall slides. You know, we don't have to remember to do the town hall slides. That action will just repeat itself every week, you know, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, so that's really, yeah, I didn't want to go on too long because it's quite a simple subject, hopefully. Any other questions?
Stephen, I just want to say I did create a Git book back in November because of all the great ones you were making and everything. And I just had trouble keeping up to date and touching on the challenge team. My challenge team this time has like 20 something people. So we're using the matrix to communicate. Right. But the Git book part was really hard for that lot of people touching the same piece at the same time. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for that. Now I updated mine, and thank you for the updates.
I mean, you've got a great point there, Chris. It's not, and I would stress this, a Git book is not appropriate for all situations, okay? You know, like it's particularly yours, Chris, like if you have a lot of people, like 20 people who are all collaborating together, Git book doesn't necessarily work so well because it's difficult to share the editing of that, isn't it? You know, so yeah. Whereas if you have a more tightly run challenge team where you only have 1 or 2 or even 3 people, that will work, you know. So I'm definitely realizing that there's not one tool. It's about the appropriate tool, isn't it, Chris?
The scaling is hard because the challenge I'm in has hundreds of proposals in it versus a challenge that might get like 30, 40, 50 at this time. And that's easy to stay tidy. But for a week to review that type of material, you need so many more people than that. And I'm trying, but I'm going to create source like you have here.
Well, you're using the matrix. I haven't come across that. Is that a kind of CMA or something, or CMS? Is that CMS or?
It's a voice over IP service.
Okay.
You can off of like Element and such. It's all end-to-end encrypted and open source. Right. So we're going to put in a proposal to build D apps on it and maybe use it for safe talking. Because look, we're having issues with Zoom every week.
It's good that it's open source. It's good that it's open source. I mean, that's another thing I try and do is keep all the tools. I do think there's not one tool, but it's important to try and keep the tools open source for obvious reasons, particularly in this community, particularly with the commitments that we're having because of transparency of information, that other people can reuse what we're doing, all that kind of thing, you know. So that's, I mean, you may get tempted to use proprietary tools like Trello, Jira, but they are proprietary. If you put your data in that, it's not your data. So that's why all the Catalyst Circle stuff is in a GitHub project board. Okay, if there's not any, thanks for posting that in chat, Kelly. That's the proposal, Patrick, the automation one. But, well, I'll finish. Yeah, that would be useful.
I do have a quick question. So I was trying to link my Git book to the repository, but it was only giving me the option to link to the CC Treasury and the Circle one, which isn't my only repositories. So why is it only picking up those two for me to link my Git book to? Is there some sort of thing I have to like just turn on to kind of get that to work? And what's this other piece, GitLab? Is that something effective to help this automation?
GitLab is another open source repository software like GitHub. It's just another type of GitHub. The way the annoying thing about GitBook is that it can be quite tricky to set up, because the way I set it up, the way you should set it up is to create a repository first, and then create a GitBook that links to it. And also that you have to have the OAA, the authority to link to the right organization. That's probably why you can't link, because you're using a organization that doesn't have an authoritative token. That's probably why. And then when you connect to it, the connection will then ask you to authorize through the authoritative token, and then it will provide a list of organizations and repositories that you do have access to. And obviously it sounds like you didn't have access to that one. So that's it. So to do that, you would have to change you'd have to set up access to that GitHub organization where the repository
I'll restart and make a new repository and start over. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah.
That sounds way easier that way.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, I just want to go and help Mercy in her room. But is there any other final questions? I was meant to be in that room, and I just this room quickly, so I kind of like. But,
that's for Chris. Can you provide a link to the matrix?
Oh yeah, can you do that?
I just have to juggle it here. Is there another way we can connect so I don't have to jump stuff through space here? I certainly can. It's just any matrix.
DM me.
I have our personal one. We've been going through a lot of testing, and we have it now tested with our Telegram. I will get you a link, Patrick. I don't want to hold up Stephen. Maybe we can follow him over there.
I'll post this recording to. Well, actually, I'll just end the recording now. So, thank you, everyone. I'll just do that as an ending, and then just stop the recording.